Welcome to, not back to, Side Quest IX on Final Fantasy, not 7, not 8, but now, as of today, as of this moment, Final Fantasy 9. And for here with me, my perennial companion, or yeah, my constant companion and perennial party member, Wes Schantz, on yet a new adventure. Welcome, Wes.
Hey, good to be back. Thanks for making the time this morning. Final Fantasy IX, it's the last of the quote unquote golden age on PlayStation. Arguably, it's past the golden age already, and we saw the end of that even a bit before with Super Nintendo. But I yeah, I'm excited to play this one. I think I've only played this game once, maybe one and a half times or so. So this is one that I know less well. It's maybe even less fresh in my mind than FF8 was when we started that one many moons ago now. But how about you? Like we kind of went back and forth on should we do Final Fantasy IX? Is that like too obvious or but we ended up going like, yeah, 7, 8, 9. We got to.
Yeah, so yeah, that's I appreciate you asking that because that was the same question I was just going to shoot back at you, Wes.
Mm.
It's like, why did we choose Final Fantasy? What is our justification for this? Because and I really feel like I should explain to the viewers some because even though we do have our scholarly projects, we do present, we do try and write articles, we're working on prep for probably a few books here. That the essence of this is only partially scholarly in nature. The other part is sort of recapturing our own childhoods and trying to understand ourselves and the nature of this medium that really was blossoming at the same time that we were. So in the same way that the PlayStation and video games and JRPGs all at once were having a golden age, so were we having our very formative adolescent years, middle school into high school, and playing as these characters that were just a few years older than we were, which is sort of that magical age, right? When you're like 12, 13, 14. Me, I was very awkward appearing, even though I was a really good athlete and I wanted to look like a really good athlete. I looked like an awkward young little chubby guy. And people like Sephiroth and Squall looked so cool and were so fit and were so strong. And at least in the case of Squall, did quite well with a lady, and all of that was beyond the pale for me. And
You were not the best looking guy here.
no, I was not
Oh,
Squall.
at the dance.
I was not at the dance. Maybe a Squall
Ah,
awkward period between his time at the orphanage and his time 17-year-old seed. There was some similarity, but no, I was. Yeah, I don't know that I've ever been the best looking guy at a dance, but I certainly was not back then. I'm much more of a late bloomer. And I'm sure the commentators or the commenters can let me know that perhaps not a bloom at all. But we really struggled with this, Wes, and not to belabor the point at all, but even though it would seem that Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9 makes sense in terms of sequence, that's not quite right in terms of Square's production or even the production of the Final Fantasies themselves. So we've gone back and forth about going into tactics. We even started, but didn't go past the first episode in Chrono Trigger. You have done Xenogears, which I'm very disappointed in myself that I wasn't involved in that project because in some ways Xenogears would have really followed Final Fantasy VII. Xenogears, Chrono Trigger, and Final Fantasy VII would have made it their own trinity, I think.
indeed, indeed.
But then also something I should mention is that Final Fantasy IX was itself overshadowed by the production of the PS2, which came out in the 2000-2001 space, and then Final Fantasy X, which came out, I think, I'm going to have to look into this, but within a year of Final Fantasy IX,
That sounds right.
really hurt the sales of 9. I'll add to this that I was a late adopter of RPGs and got into RPGs first, I guess, technically through Pokemon on the
Oh, yes.
A when I was in 6th grade, but more legitimate RPGs off of the Game Boy. I think I also played like Final Fantasy Legend 3 on the Game Boy to train for Final Fantasy 7 on
Nice.
the PlayStation, and I think it helped a little bit. But so really, my the beginning of my RPG career began with these non-typical more futuristic RPGs like Final Fantasy and 8, Final Fantasy 7 and 8, not like the more traditional sort of Dragon Quest or Legend of Dragoon, the more medieval fantasy set works. And so when Final Fantasy 9 was attempting to be a return to
Mm,
sort of earlier iterations like Final Fantasy 5 and those before 6, which started moving in the 7, 8 steampunk
hmm
direction, for me, it was really a brave new world.
hmm
So I didn't have the immediate connection to nine that many more advanced players had to it because I had started at a very odd, though I think sort of common starting
hmm
place for American gamers at Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, like you, even though this game I think does a really, really good job, just like 6, 7, and 8, at really pinpointing the fact of human or just creaturely mortality and
Mm,
how a conscious being has to deal with that through the characters of Vivi, Zidane, and especially Kuja. Um, I don't remember a ton of it. I definitely don't feel comfortable enough with the mechanics of the game to not use a strategy guide like I did with Final Fantasy VIII, where I felt like I could break it just keeping my characters at level 15. Um,
yeah.
Renault, I think, never got over level 12, um, which really helped with Ultimacia. But um, but yeah, I think I was also just I was starting to get a little bit older with this game too. I think I was in high school now, and it just didn't it did not quite hit me
hmm
with the same force as 8. So I consider myself a bit of a weird person in that I have the strong connection to 7, which isn't weird, but this much stronger connection to Final Fantasy 8 than even to 9, which I think, at least among Final Fantasy fandoms, is a little bit inverted.
Yeah. No, yeah, that seems right. There is a kind of awkward adolescence that the series is going through at this point where yeah, with 7, the huge success, with 8, a very interesting development thematically in terms of the mechanics, but doesn't fully land with player expectation that was set up after 7. And then you have the kind of divergence that happens where you've got like 9 in development, 10 in development. I think 11 is even in development this time, right? And they're making that movie, which completely bombs.
Uh,
As technologically fancy as it is, The Spirits Within. I still have never seen it. Kind of want to, but yeah. So there's a kind of an attempt, and I think most people seem to agree that it's a successful attempt in 9, particularly to yeah, recover something or sort of compile and sum up what the series had been up to that point. And in some ways it's the swan song of the original, you know, Final Fantasy, whatever that means to there's some interesting theses that people have put forth about like why that is a meaningful kind of catch-all term for the games in this series. And and I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of uncertain about that. I tend to think that as much as there is that coheres within the various games, uh, Final Fantasy is, let's say, like more of a vibe, right? More of an attitude or an approach than it is like there's like this is a Final Fantasy. Because I think arguably Chrono Trigger is in some ways like the greatest Final Fantasy, or Xenogears is arguably better than any of the Final Fantasies and yet does most of what they are doing. It's the same kind of approach. And yet it's not within the main line. And there's some reasons historically people talk about why that is. Like uh, it was going to be too dark, it was going to be too religious, this and that. And so it becomes its own spin-off series. But yeah, I think I'm probably like the exact target audience for this game, I think, because I grew up playing games on the SNES and I was impressed by 7, but also kind of unsure about it when it came out. I was like, I don't know about all these graphics and these newfangled polygons. And then 8, I was massively disappointed by at the time. Did not, I just bounced right off of 8 as much as I appreciate it now looking back. And 9, I was like, okay, this is cool. I'm going to try to play this before whatever else happens. Like they lean fully into this cinematic thing. I want to play this, proper Final Fantasy. And yet it was underwhelming. I mean, I think it didn't really like it wasn't that transformative experience that I was hoping for, and that I had with other games like Xenogears, like Seven to an extent. Um, and Four was the first one that I played, and I think Four, released as two, remains like a really, I think, in some ways, like the classic statement of Final Fantasy for me personally is that one. Maybe just because it's the first one I played, but I think that's what they were going for with nine. And I was like, well, but two was already that, or four, four was already that. So what is it that I'm really doing here with this game that's trying too hard in some ways? And so that was kind of my impression at the time. I remember liking it fine, but kind of just being underwhelmed, finding other games and other, media objects at the time to be way more interesting. And I really kind of stopped playing these games after 10. So I
Yeah,
did play 10 and put
same.
some time into it, put some effort into it, but really, again, couldn't like really, it didn't have the magic anymore. It just wasn't there. I was like, all right, but I can go back to those anytime on those old games. I can play them whenever. I don't need to keep playing new ones. I think I'm done. And so I never really have gone back. Like I tried playing 12 a little bit, but it was just like, meh. And and yeah, so that's kind of where I think I'm interested in, replaying this game to see, is there more there? Is there more than this kind of superficial, what we're trying to do is really clear and it just doesn't quite work? So A, does it have clear flaws that I can point to when I'm playing through to say like, here's where they're trying this and it's not working, this is why? Or is there something else there that people have been missing? Um, is there a richer, as you're saying, kind of thematic engagement that the developers are able to finally kind of uh, unravel as they have grown across the games that they've worked on throughout the series, and they kind of like crystallize it right in this one, and then move on to other things. I'm open to that possibility. There's a couple really great commentaries out there that I think we should also try to, you know, in some way either directly reach out to them or at least read the thing and talk about the thing. And that's Resonant Arc, the video streaming duo have recently been working through this game again. And they've got a few different people that they've hosted on their show as well, to talk with them. That includes Final Fantasy Union, who just released a book. I think it's the second book that they've done about the series. And then there's this other website run by a philosopher uh, who I have actually talked to, but it's been a while. And he's got a long essay about the like what is up with the end of this game? Like where does this Necron guy come from? And then how's that kind of work with what's actually there in the beginning of the game? And so I think that would be interesting to reread a little more closely this time. And there's tons of people out there who are commenting on this stuff and doing, scholarly or one foot in scholarly, one foot in popular kinds of analyses that I think are really interesting. And I think, yeah, you and I have a lot to contribute to that discussion if we can kind of get their ear a little bit and maybe just mooch off of their audience a tiny bit, ride their coattails. That'd be cool. So we'll see.
Well, yeah, I mean, so in video games, and anybody listening to this channel in particular is probably hip to this distinction, but there is a debate that started in at least the early 2000s, maybe even in the 90s, between video game scholars who focus on ludology, the
Hmm.
logos of playing, the ludus, like the ludus magnus of the Roman Colosseum, the great game. And but then also the narratologists, which I would say we appreciate gameplay and we love the gameplay, and we don't, I think we do a good job of not trying to impose literary concepts onto the game, but I do think we help to bring out narrative aspects of the game with our familiarity with literary and philosophical analysis, and also an RPG which clearly locates itself at the intersection of ludology and narratology, particularly in games that come after Final Fantasy IX, like when you get into the Xeno Saga and Xenoblade sort of games, where
Hmm.
you have
Hmm.
these, 15, 20-minute long cutscenes that are reminiscent of the final cutscene of Final Fantasy VIII, but are interspersed throughout the game.
Yeah.
One real and then even with modern, much more contemporary games like the Harry Potter, the Legacy of Hogwarts game, where one can even play on a story mode. So the difficulty
Mm,
is shot down in order to focus on the story it's telling. And so I do think that we bring a lot and a lot more than the typical video game commentator, particularly on YouTube, in the narratological space. So we are on the graph, and we do occupy, I think, our own point. But just to give sort of a mundane reason to play Final Fantasy IX right now is that we exist in time, and just like Dante experienced the 700th anniversary of his death years ago in 2021 from 1321, just as this year there's going to be a major conference on the southern Spanish philosopher Averroes, who died
mm,
or was born in 1126. Now we're going to have his 900th anniversary in the south of Spain in 2026. But Final Fantasy IX came out in 2000, and it is the 25-year anniversary. And so
mm,
Resonant Arc is, and many of the commentators who are commentating on this game have used this quarter century mark as a good time to come back around at this game. And those who are parts of fandoms and listen to Final Fantasy Union and Resonant Arc probably know that there was a lot of speculation leading up to, I believe, E3 this year, that Square might be announcing a remake. Especially after having remade or been in the process of remaking and innovating in the Final Fantasy VII world or cosmos for so long, and then having remastered Final Fantasy VIII. I think there was a lot of hope that Final Fantasy IX would get some sort of treatment, some sort of re-edition. But as of now, pretty late in 2025, September, fans of the game's hopes have been dashed. And so I suppose part of what we're doing is we're going to help restore their hope, even if they're not going to get a new edition, which we don't know if that's true yet, though it's looking sort of likely. There will be yet another set. There will be yet another playthrough of this game and trying to bring out all the richness in it. So even though this is not quite the same fanfare as a new game or a remastered version, I think we contribute what we have, and so we see what we can do.
yeah, cool.
Yeah, and sorry, I just made a thumbs up here with
I love it.
and I wonder if that'll come through in the
Stay
recording.
on the recording. I hope
He
so.
likes that we had a fan here. But yeah, so all that goes to say is that I agree with you. I didn't have the strongest reaction to this game, but like you in Final Fantasy VIII, I am prepared to be moved
Mm.
by this game because I think perhaps it was my neophyte taste that made me love Final Fantasy VII and VIII. They look so new, they look so futuristic. But maybe this return, which for me is an initial going to the Middle Ages, will furnish yeah, undiscovered jewels that I have not yet mined for in this game.
I I mean, the crystal is prominently featured right at the beginning, right? In the kind of logo of this, you know, right where you'd have Squall or the Comet, right? Squall and Renoa, the Comet, the Materia. So this is like, yeah, this is what we're gonna center, and I think it looks kind of like there's a big old crystal in the middle of the city
Yes.
with the castle, and there's this huge kind of shiny thing. Uh, and closely connected with that seems to be this character whose name we don't know yet at the beginning when we're seeing the cinematic, but she is evidently the princess of this place. We learn her name shortly after that, Garnet, right? So some kind of treasure, yeah, jewel, a gemstone. Um, and I think the first thing that we see when we actually start the game is her kind of vision or dream sequence of a stormy sea, these huge waves, these figures on a small boat, one of whom appears to be her, and they're trying to weather the storm, trying to survive. And that to me, it feels very, um, you know, reminiscent of like a Zelda game. Um,
Mhm.
Link's Awakening opens with something like that going on, although in that case it's a different sort of game, right? It's more of an adventure action style gameplay. Um, but that does suggest to me that they're interested in connecting this, maybe even going toe to toe with, the other great fantasy series out there. Because I think they've pretty much put Dragon Quest slash Dragon Warrior to the mat at this point. They have won that head to head over the course of several iterations, at least in the global sales, maybe not in Japan specifically. But then, so what's left? What is the last world to conquer, right? Oh, we'll go up against Nintendo itself, right? That was the kind of subtext I was getting. I don't know if that was super intentional there, but and that's not like the most famous Zelda game, but I know that Wind Waker is coming out around the same time, so I'm not sure. That's another like water-focused Zelda game. Um, so there's something going on with that, right? This idea of like the elemental crystals, the ocean, the rain, storm, the sea, the thunder, right? And this kind of welter of powerful elements. Um, and these two small figures trying to survive. And then, but she wakes up or she comes to or whatever out of that trance, out of that vision, and she's the princess. Everything is fine. She's safe. And yet she's somehow, sad, isolated, alone. Who was that other figure? What was going on? At least that was an adventure. At least that was exciting. Now she's like kind of trapped in this beautiful, opulent fairy tale castle. She looks out the window. We get the whole, this is, um, this game world that we're going to explore, right? Here it is. We get the whole view of Alexandria City, and there's birds flying, and there's airships in the sky and the clouds, and there's waterfalls, and it's awesome. I mean, it's pretty cool, and yet it's much more cartoony. It's much more, um, yeah, obviously contrived, let's say. It's not going for realism. It's going for something else. So that was kind of my first impression on this playthrough, trying to like analyze a little bit of like the subtext. Yeah, like what could be going on here? What is up with the intention here? And then of course we get into uh, the actual gameplay pretty quickly, actually, compared to yeah what we've seen since.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I Final Fantasy VII is the first game to have an intro cinematic and to employ the CGI. And then later, when Final Fantasies 4, 5, and 6 are re-released on the PlayStation, with Chrono Trigger, with Final Fantasy 4 and 5 and 6 together,
Mm,
there were CGIs added in,
hmm.
which were really cool. But yeah, thinking back to 7 and 8's CGIs, I see elements in 9 from both of them. So 7 begins with a look at Midgar,
Hmm.
which literally means Middle Earth, right? That's the name of
Yep.
the middle realm that becomes Earth, or in Norse mythology, and is called Middle Earth in J.R.R. Tolkien's mythology.
Yeah.
And so we get to see Nibelheim, or sorry, not Nibelheim, sorry, that's another one. We get to see Midgar. It's sort of circular mandala Ouroboros structure shooting up Mako into the air. And so we
Yeah.
get the world and the city prefigured all in one, and it is this futuristic one with even that which is natural there is eerily artificial, right? Like this sort of snow seems to be more like
Mm,
pollution snow, and it's like green, and even Ares's face has an unnatural green sort of pallor on it at first,
yeah.
lit up by this like this chemical unnatural Mako green, or the unnatural light of this abominable place. But then in Final Fantasy VIII, we again get the significant sort of depth psychology ocean imagery, right? We're right at a
Yeah.
shore, and then we start shooting over the shore really fast, like we're a spirit, sort of like we're Squall's consciousness going back to Laguna, but we're moving over space rather than time. And so there's a very strong mix between, is this real? Is this dream? This is very phantasmagoric, the initial CGI in Final Fantasy VIII. But then, yes, right. So we get both of those elements here in 9. Not only do we have the admixture of sort of dream and reality, and then also sort of a curious ocean sequence. But this time we have a figure from who seems to be dreaming herself, or is at least uh, her is anonymous. She has a cloak, right,
Hmm.
and a hood, so we can't 100% tell who this person is. So there's a little bit of doubt. But then also we get this magnificent opening shot, like you said, of Alexandria. It looks like this beautiful carnival-esque medieval and yet transcendentally medieval town,
Hmm.
archetypally medieval town, like
Yeah.
what one imagines if one reads the 1411 Book of 3 Hours. With its beautiful colors that lent their scheme later to Sleeping Beauty through the Disney artists. Like it is
Mm.
a one doubts that there was ever a medieval city that looked like this. Certainly no airships, unless my history is a little bit off. But we are reintroduced to a world, introduced for the first time to this world, but shown that, like Final Fantasy VII, this is the world, but it is a very, very different world from the sort of Neo Tokyo, sort of Gotham-esque urban or modern urban sprawl with like pollution and technology. Now we have this sort of magic and crystal and the industry that is going to create this world is very different. I should also add there's a much more essentializing aspect in this world, in that unlike in 7 and 8, one's characters, regardless of their base stats, can't really, and unlike 10 as well, can't really just become anybody they want to be.
Mm.
The first character we see is a thief, and he will remain a thief, Zidane. The second character we get to maintain, we don't know his name yet in the game yet, but we happen to know because we've played before, is
Mm.
Vivi, who is a black mage, literally as part of a race of created characters called black mages. And so there is a sort of a return in this game to the I don't want to call it confining yet, but to the original conceit of there being a class system.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so not only do we return to the more hierarchically based sort of Middle Ages, but we also have an actual, I don't want to say necessarily hierarchy because there might be an evenness between each job, thief and black mage and dragoon and whatever else that we run into.
Hmm.
But the characters do have classes,
Yeah.
and this is a difference between 7 and 8, but it is a return to sort of Final Fantasy tactics and Final Fantasy 5 and 4. What do
Right.
you do? So do you think that's going to be a convention that is subverted in the same way that Final Fantasy 8 sort of made us think that it was going to be a simplistic narrative about good and evil? Are they going to subvert ideas that we have about classes and class, or yeah, what do you make of this return?
Yeah. I mean, I think that what they're what they're doing differently, it seems to me, is introducing a uh yeah, a class, but one that is kind of embedded in the story in a way that hadn't happened before.
Hmm.
And I'm saying that carefully because I haven't played a lot of five. I know that the class system in that game is connected with the crystals, like in terms of the mechanics. At least each time you get a new crystal, you unlock new classes. But your characters can change, and that's the thing. They're not locked in. You get to move them around, and you get to combine in interesting ways. Four, yeah, your character is what they are. However, with the exception of your main character, Cecil, um, that isn't like super well tied in with the actual themes and story of the game. His arc is pretty impressive and interesting, and he does transform at a certain point from a dark knight to a paladin, a white knight, right? And that's cool. But I think what they're doing in this game is trying to give each of the characters some kind of more developed arc, which would be along the lines of six, right? Where you see each of those characters, with a couple exceptions, like really engage in the world and their backstory and their relationships with one another. And that's kind of a high watermark of the series with respect to characterization, uh, and the ways that um, yeah, they each kind of have a class as well, right? And they don't get to sort of move around that much with, they can all use magic is the only thing. So anyway, I see it as, yeah, very much a return to those kinds of games earlier in the series where there's kind of limits on what characters can and can't do. Um, and maybe it's setting us up for disappointment if we're coming from 7 and 8, where we could sort of make our characters whatever kinds of battlers we want, and that's sort of like not connected at all with the story. But I think what by weaving in the gameplay mechanics with the narrative, there is a more appropriate use of the medium if that's like really like trying, if that's really what they're trying to do. And so it opens up certain potential, avenues for seeing that yeah, works or doesn't work or sort of works. And I'll just say up front, like I remember pretty distinctly being disappointed with the way that certain characters in this game are not really developed. Like I think if that was what they were going for, they don't super get there. Um, and maybe we'll see, but uh, at least that seems to be the intent, right? And I think at least with certain characters, the Black Mage, the Thief, the Princess, the Knight, we do see a fair amount of that kind of development happening. And even like at the very opening start of the game, if you don't start a new game right away, if you just sort of wait on that screen, different like character images will come up and they each have like a one word little descriptor almost, or like a tagline. Um, so that's again part of what I mean, I think they're going for with the visuals, with the whole aesthetic of the world. Um, we're going to tell this kind of fairy tale story. We're going to do it through a video game and this particular kind of game, this genre that you're familiar with. If we're going to subvert that, it's going to be minimal, is my impression, right? We're trying to do that. What we're subverting is your recent experience with the series. We're going back to something prior, something more, yeah, archetypal about the series. That seems to be the argument here.
I think that's a strong point, especially now that I think back to six, and six has a lot of parallels to nine when I think about the beginning. So even though it didn't have an opening CGI, one starts the game with Tara, this
Hmm.
amnesiac woman. And but then very quickly, really the real start to the game, when one has control over a character that's not in a mech and can die, is when one takes control of the male thief Locke.
Yep. Yep.
And I always think of Locke like John Locke and Thomas Hobbes, but I should probably just think of a Kean Locke with his
Hmm. Hmm.
too much learning, right? But similar thing in this game. Even though the opening CGI focuses on Garnet, has a sort of female figure, in the same way that we saw Ares first rather than say
Hmm.
Cloud,
Hmm.
and also advertisements for this strange theatrical production called Loveless, which they make a lot of,
Mm.
with the character Genesis, who quotes from it incessantly. But but here too, we have this opening image of this anima-like figure, again a Jungian sort of depth psychological notion of like this princess lady. But then we're on the opposite side of the law, right? Instead of somebody who's in a castle, who is wealthy, who is perhaps magical in some way, whose name even suggests value and wealth, we go down to this guy who doesn't even seem to be properly human. Not only is he a thief, and we know this because in the initial battle that we're immediately thrown into with the thieves boss, all of the thieves can steal. They all have the steal option. And in fact, one can steal something from this boss.
Yes.
Um, this character that we have presented in front of us is does not have a giant sword like Cloud, which made him super cool looking, and especially that flip he does off of the train when he first, this guy is cool. Um, Squall has this fight with Cypher and takes a blade to the face, but then gives the blade to his face, and his sword is turning into angel wings at the same time that this is happening, and
Hmm.
he's cool too. Zidane is weird.
Yeah.
He's got kind of long hair with this part down the middle, which is
Uh,
a little bit inaccurate, which just given the time. So when I was 15, I still had hair parted down the middle, and I was made fun of by fellow baseball players. So that was like considered like kind of an old school haircut.
yeah. Yeah.
And he's got a tail. And so, I mean, what is going on with this supposed protagonist that we don't even get access to for very long. We hear a plan, and
Yeah.
then we go to this nameless guy who has to sell himself into slavery in order to progress the
Yeah.
story forward. Um, but I mean that was a shock to me, and even now it's sort of a shock. I'm like, what? I'm supposed to put myself into the shoes of this small, thievish, tailed guy?
Yeah, no, he's got a little troop. I mean, they've got a lot of spunk and energy, right? Each of them has the steal option, so they're obviously thieves. Yeah. And then their boss kind of comes in, he's like this bumbling oaf, huge guy with a dragon hat on, and he's apparently like sort of stuck in the hat and like doesn't really know what's going on, and there's like this play fight that ensues once you light the candle in the middle of the room, right? So it's like sort of teaching you the design of the game a little bit, how to interact with objects, and and then it teaches you how to fight just by throwing you into a battle. Um, you can steal, yeah, some stuff from him. It's really hard to steal like the best item from him. It takes a lot of turns. I didn't even bother to do it. I stole a couple things and then it was like can't steal, can't steal, can't steal. I'm like, okay, whatever. And so we just finished that battle. But I mean, I think, and that is one of the gripes about this game is like how significant stealing rare things from bosses is and how low the percentages are on that. But whatever. So, there's a lot of humor here. There's a lot of kind of, yeah, personality. And it's like kind of stock figures, right? It's like the theatrical troupe that are actually robbers. Like that's a recognizable thing. We know what kind of world we're in with this. But yeah, I agree. The biggest twist here in the opening does seem to be when we suddenly are with Vivi, and it's the most original thing as well. It's the most, I think, arguably, it's touching because he is so powerless, so kind of weak. He's almost a silent protagonist, but not quite. He does like talk, but he's like shy or at least sort of reticent. And he does seem to be a little bit lost, like everyone else sort of knows what they're doing. Everyone has their role. There's the blacksmith, there's the grandma, there's the kids running about the streets, and he's like just there. Um, Ostensibly, he's supposed to go to this play because that's what everybody's going to do. The nobles down to the lowly people, right? They're going to see this play to celebrate the princess's birthday or whatever.
Put on
Um,
by the teams that we were a part of.
yeah, yeah. Tantalus, right? So there's this like mythological thing. Anyway, so but yet he can't get in, right? His paper is a fake ticket. He has no apparent identity, no apparent memory, right? And so, yeah, clearly like coded black mage, but there's no battles here either. We're not fighting anything. This is just exploration, just talking to people. And so it's very strange how the game sort of opens by like segmenting out these aspects of the game, right? The cinematic, the kind of awe-inspiring is over here with this character, and then the fighting is over here, and the kind of personality, right? Um, Exuding personality, Zidane. Although we might not totally jive with it at first, it's weird. But then over here is Vivi, who do we don't know yet, and he's just doing the walk around the town, talk to people, sort of explore and just admiring too, like the detail that goes into this town. It's incredible. Um, but there is this problem. Yeah, he has to essentially enslave himself to this other kid who calls him slave, and he's black, and that feels really weird as an American player to just kind of say that. But it's there. It's there in 6.2, right? The slave crown that Tara is wearing. This is clearly a thing, like powerful forces brought under constraint, brought into slavery for the service of some master. And I think we can generally assume that whatever that master is, they're the bad guy, right? So I don't think we're saying directly that the rat kid is like a bad person, but he's clearly part of some larger structure that is not good. And he's at the bottom rung of that, and he's trying to, almost Huck Finn like or Tom Sawyer like, work his way up or whatever. Um, but it's setting up this very deep thematic thing of the master slave dynamic, of what is up with Vivi, right? This idea of magic and how to harness it properly, how to use it, how to be in tune with it, right? That seems to be pretty close to the heart of the Final Fantasy series. So it's kind of yeah, broken out in these weird ways before clearly these characters are going to come together at some point. We just don't know how.
That's really interesting that you say that because you're making me think two things. One, the game makes you really walk around and explore and talk to people. You
Yeah.
cannot progress without talking to the right people, going and trying to use your ticket, and then your ticket isn't the right ticket, and then you don't. And then as a player, what do you do? That's supposed to take you to the next part of the game, right? There are soldiers that keep one from going into the castle and progressing. So in order to get the prompt, and so even if one goes into the back alley where the gentleman on the ladder is, without having gone through this talking at this, not super obvious ticket taking booth, one doesn't get the appropriate prompt from the game with the rat kid to steal the ladder when the man who's painting the wall leaves, and then to go take that and do and learn how to save. But the other thing I wanted, you made me think, is that when you talk about the master and the slave, I think about Hegel's master-slave dialectic and how,
Mm-hmm.
in sort of the struggle for consciousness between two people, there's like a struggle to take on one of two roles. But something I think this game illustrates that regardless of the sort of power struggles that may exist naturally between individuals, um, irrespective of where one ends up, master or slave, I think something this game is going to really hit hard is that neither of you are gods, no matter what. Sort of like Kefka has to end up, or Sephiroth fails to, or Ultimacia gets to. As close as these people get to ultimate power, none of them transcend fate, and none of them transcend their own mortal coil. And so something I think that this game will be able to hit on, having a class system, having ranks, having prejudices between characters and characters who willingly use other characters. We'll see, I think, soon that the Black Mages are themselves used by another, and even perhaps produced by another class of characters, that though that may affect the social standing of the individuals within those classes within the game, none of them are made immune to the prospect of death. Not even the highest ranking, most divine characters in this game are immortal or are beyond death. And there are going to be a couple like Necron that sort of pop up out of nowhere near the end. But whether it be Kuja or Zidane or Garnet or Vivi, all of these characters, regardless of what I am saying, that's my favorite word right now. Regardless of what they're struggling, regardless of their rank within the world or who they're struggling with or how they're perceived, all of them will have to struggle with the fact. And I think Kuja, Zidane, and Vivi in particular, with the fact of their own mortality.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think there's an idea of hierarchy. Yeah, that's really clearly set up here. And it's very traditional hierarchy. And it's showing us, I think, that yeah, we have to submit to the game, right? Like I really wanted to not enslave myself to the rat kid,
No, I tried,
but
but
I I know that I need to use this ladder for something. Clearly, it's important. The guy who was up there is named Dante the sign maker, right? Talk about ladders and hierarchy. Okay, but he's walked off. I can't find him. Alleyway Jack won't do anything but teach me this dumb card game that's way worse than the FF8 card game. To say nothing of the Xenogears card game, which is super fun. Okay, but I don't care about that. I just want to pick up this dang ladder, or I want to climb this ladder. I can only interact with things that have an exclamation point. Come on, let's go. But you have to submit. You have to play this part, right? You have to do this kind of theatrical nonsense of, yeah, becoming the rat kid's slave so that you can progress in the story. Because that is ultimately like you, I think I'm more interested in that. I can explore this space as much as I want, but I want to see more spaces within this game. I want to explore the architecture of this world. I want to know more. I have to allow certain things to happen in order to get there. And yeah, death is a thing that's presented really early. Like if you try to steal too many times from that Baku boss guy, he'll kill you. He'll at least kill some of the weak guys next to you. I don't know if there's something where your like steal rate might go up once your HP goes down, or I'm not sure if that's a thing. I didn't wait to find out because I was worried. Like, man, his sword is pretty powerful. It's knocking out my little friends here. Um, so yeah, so there's um, even within the like the play aspect of it, the drama on the stage aspect of it, um, death is clearly in some way a master that we have to submit to. And when you try to overcome that too directly, as we've seen with previous games, bad things happen to you, right? If you try to do that in a way that is detached from the natural harmony with nature, and death is a part of that, then forces arise, forces of light array themselves in a party and come in and take you down, right? And so giving us kind of this view from the bottom is a really interesting way. And I love that it's like sort of a ruined church-ish place, like a bell tower at least, that has churchy vibes to it. That's the place where we're carrying this ladder. So he's carrying the ladder up a ladder in this bell tower to get somewhere else. I find that to be a really fascinating little image, really funny, really ironic. And that's where the Moogle appears, and that's where um, at least I saved. I think you did too, right? And just this is enough. This is plenty to just kind of ruminate on for a week. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have to think about what I think about Dante the sign maker. I mean, so the latter, just to say, make two connections between that. There are some that believe that a Muslim work called the Liber de la Scala, the Book of the Ladder,
Mhm.
which itself features an afterlife, was itself a sort of a proto version of Dante's Divine Comedy that he may have heard orally and may have informed his writing of the Divine Comedy. It's not nearly as ornate or complex as the Divine Comedy, but this is something that was suggested in the 2015 compendium called Dante and Islam, put out by Maria Cordy,
Cool.
Edalia, as it were. But also the image of the ladder itself, besides Satan acting as a ladder in Canto 34 of the Inferno and in the Ninth Circle between hell and the area of purgatory, and himself having created a physical funnel that becomes hell, really well organized for just a funnel that a guy fell into. And so very interesting, perfect throw by God, as one might say, to create this ornate nine circled with subcircle sort of environment just through falling. I really want to write an article on how did that happen. But
Yeah, a lot of English on that
yeah, a
shot.
lot of English, like very interesting throw. As it were. Heidegger would love it. But then also in the seventh sphere of paradise, there is an image. So the souls from spheres 4 through 7 create images, circles in the sphere of the sun, cross in the sphere of Mars, an eagle that then turns into language.
Mm,
Says cherish justice. You diligite justitiam qui judicatis. Uh, yeah, Teram, you who would judge the world.
mhm.
So cherish
Masters,
justice.
rulers. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, exactly. And then the seventh, after that, the contemplatives, where Peter Damian is, and the symbol that they make there is the celestial ladder, which is supposed to be based on the ladder that Jacob saw of Jacob and Esau.
Cool.
And so Dante the sign maker with a ladder. There are at least three major allusions. I don't yet know what to do with this particular one, but taking a ladder then into a church space and using
Yeah.
top, very like if one considers Celestial Paradise, the third canticle of Dante's work, itself like a church, because of the presence of God. And then in the seventh sphere of 10, but really the seventh is the last normal sphere. Afterwards, you get the fixed stars, the primum mobile, and the empyrean, not really sphere in the traditional sense. Um, there might be some parallelism there. Having a ladder on the top of a church area is like having the celestial ladder at the top of Dante's heaven. And so I'm not trying to stretch it too much, so much as just to put things out there in case we do make a connection. But
Yeah.
since I tend to have to work with the Dante character, I thought I would at least mention that since you brought it up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that they're whether it's intentional or not, it's the image itself that we can kind of make what we will of. And the fact that it has been used in that way suggests that there is something there. Yeah, Dante himself being interested in some Arabic story potentially, or at least, at the very least, the image of Jacob's ladder in Genesis, right? So that, yeah, that's cool. It's a way to hand along or carry along a tradition, and that's cool because in this moment the save system is kind of introduced as well with the Mughals who appear. They write your story in a book, which is again like a classic sort of Final Fantasy thing. Um, the Mughals are a kind of mascot character for the series, and in this game, it definitely seems like it's connecting it with six again pretty closely because again, there we meet them very early on. They kind of have their own things going on, and in this one, there's the Moogle who writes the story in the book, the save Moogle, and then there's this other like traveling Moogle, Stiltskin, who seems pretty cool. He's like on a little adventure of his own. Maybe we'll run into him again. Who knows? But it's apparent that there's like Moogles throughout this world that we're going to encounter to help us save our journey. So, um, you know, that's one of the major differences I would say between like old games and new ones is like how flexible is the save system? Can you just save state anywhere and save scrub as a result? Like just save, and then if something doesn't happen the right way, you reset immediately. You're right there. You can pick right up, right? So it's essentially like breaking the game to get around some of the random number generator stuff. Um, there's that, but then there's also this idea that like there are natural breaks within the game that the game is showing you where those are, and the save point tells you, hey, you should probably pause here and take a break, or something dangerous is about to happen, you better save here because you might get knocked out in this next boss battle, right? It's essentially like a way for the game to communicate with you as much as it is for you to save your progress so that you can, pick up where you left off. And even before save points, there was like the password system, right? You get the password from the game so that you can skip ahead. You can warp to that point, right? There's warp points and things. And so this kind of gets into, I would say, yeah, the ways that games and stories do and do not play nice together, right? But it seems to be a pretty happy medium, and yeah, it's a relic. I mean, it's not really a thing anymore. Save points, so.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that, and I like that it's again a throwback. We have Moogles rather than these transformative Moombas from Final Fantasy VIII that seem to be the sort of attempt at Moogles. And yeah, I remember
Yeah,
the Moogles and meeting Locke, and there being a whole room. One could find a secret room full of Moogles at some point. I think, and certain iterations are they called Mog, or do you get a character named Mog who is a
I
Moogle?
think that's his name. Yeah, yeah, Mog. And
In
yeah, yeah.
Fantasy VII, are there Moogles, or is
There's that game in the Gold Saucer where you
that
can
what
play
I was
the little arcade game. Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I was thinking they're in that game. I was thinking, yes. And then there's sort of Kate Sith, who's on a creature that's kind of like a winged Moogle, but is not.
Totally. Yep, yep, yep.
Okay. Yeah, no. So yeah, another return to the past. And I like that you're bringing our attention to the fact of how this game teaches us how to play it. So in Final Fantasy VIII, you draw our attention to the fact that we keep getting timed, and how one interacts with time affects one's seed rank and any manner of things. Time is a huge part of this game, but you are really bringing out that in Final Fantasy IX, limitation and
Hmm.
structure
Hmm.
are a big part of this game. This is how you fight. This is what happens if you try and do this too long.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, you're going to have to talk to characters, and in fact, you will have to submit to certain conceits in this game in order to move forward. Oh, this is how you save. This is when you save. And I know you have a bent for the pedagogical, but I do think it's fascinating how this game teaches us how to play in a very distinctly different way from Final Fantasy VIII and VII. I would say this is very much not in media res in the
Mm.
same ways as those games are, even though they start differently. Final Fantasy VII, one has to immediately fight and continually fight. Final Fantasy IX, we do get a fight, but it's a pretty cozy, hard to
Mm.
lose fight if one is straightforward in it. Though maybe one doesn't learn the most if one does that. I only stole one thing and then couldn't steal anything from the boss. I didn't, or from our boss who was the boss. I didn't realize that you could continue to that he might have things even when it said I couldn't steal anything anymore. And so now I understand that conceit. Thank you, teacher. But then even thinking about the necessary breaks in the game that that the Moogles are going to help us with. The game is itself suggesting to us the way to enjoy the aesthetic experience.
Mhm.
Take it in these sways and these amounts of times, and then kind of digest it, and then move forward. And well, I think that's a really good sort of plan or map for continuing to conduct ourselves and moving forward.
Yeah, it's time to ring the bell, I think, for now, and yeah, write down our story progress. Um, my
You go first. You go to the ladder first.
my it's dangerous, yeah, like this poor kid. Yeah, I really feel a certain amount of sympathy for this character. It's not at all, like you say, a cool character that I want to embody. It's much more like, oh, you poor little guy, let me protect you. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah.
no. So, well, I'm gonna have to get back to protecting him pretty soon here. On your suggestion, I'm very much looking forward to playing more of this with you, Wes. Finishing it before
Yeah,
the end of 2025, so we stay consistent with the quarter century
let's
motif.
do it.
Really hoping to get to engage more with other interlocutors, in particular Final Fantasy Union and Resonant Arc, who I think are leaders in our space. Um, but um, but yeah, we're contributing more and more. And again, anybody who listens to us, please leave comments, questions, vehement criticisms. It all helps the algorithm. And
Yes.
so we love engagement, and we're in this, I think, to engage with other like-minded and not so like-minded individuals
Mhm.
as well. We're putting it out there publicly because we think there's some value in what we study, and at least for each other what we have to say. Um, and I'm looking
Totally.
forward to yet another project with you, Wes. Hopefully another. I think it'll at least be 20 episodes. I looked back. I think we had 29 episodes in Final Fantasy VII, around 25 for Final Fantasy VIII. It'll probably be between 20 and 25,
Yeah,
depending on our speed. But another rich bout of content, and another rich study to contribute to the ludologists, the narratologists, the literary people, the people who just enjoy video games or just enjoy listening or don't have time to play video games anymore,
mhm,
but did and want to just have that slightly lesser level of engagement by listening rather than playing and not being subject to save states.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, I listen to podcasts while I do all kinds of stuff around the house, and I think it is a valuable way to just, yeah, revisit that world and think about what it means. Yeah, I hope there's value in this for people. So thanks again for your time,
Thank you.
and thanks for recording.
See you soon.